Welcome to the second video for Chapter 4 Alpha, in which we talk about the new noun forms. So first, let's review some basic info about nouns. As you know, the endings of Greek nouns change to reflect how the noun is being used in the sentence. We call these endings the case endings. The noun endings for Greek, like English, also reflect number, which is singular versus plural. The changes to the endings follow more or less three different patterns. Another word for pattern is paradigms. We call these three patterns the three declensions. In chapters 1 through 3, we worked exclusively with the second declension. All of the nouns we learned that end in omicron sigma were masculine. You'll learn later that everything that ends in omicron sigma in the nominative singular is usually masculine, but there are a handful of nouns that are feminine. Everything we learned ending in omicron nu was neuter, and this remains true. In Chapter 4, we're going to look at the first declension endings. The new endings we'll see are that nominative singulars can either end in eta, which is going to be feminine, and we're learning these in Chapter 4 Alpha, or the nominative singular ends in eta sigma, and these will be masculine, and we'll learn them in Chapter 4 Beta. So if I told you that nouns ending in omicron sigma are mostly masculine but sometimes feminine, and that the nouns of the first declension are mostly feminine but sometimes masculine, you might be asking, well, how do I know which gender it is? For that, you have to memorize the nominative singular with the definite article. Only the definite article tells you the gender of the noun. The ending of the noun tells you more about which paradigm we're following and less about specifically which gender that noun is. So first, let's look at the definite articles. Definite articles differ for masculine, feminine, and neuter. We learned the masculine definite articles in chapters 1 through 3, and the neuter definite articles as well. Remember that the vocative singular o is not really an article. It doesn't mean the, which is the definite article in English. It means o, and it's an interjection, but we'll memorize it in the chart with the rest of the definite articles. You'll see that the masculine and neuter definite articles share many forms in common. They differ only in the nominative and the accusative. So now we're going to learn the definite articles for feminine nouns. Again, the definite article in English is the. So he for nominative singular feminine nouns is the. Tes, genitive singular feminine nouns, also the. All of these mean the. Te, dative singular, you'll notice that it has an iota subscript, just like the masculine and neuter singular. And then ten ends in a nu, just like the masculine accusative singular, ton versus ten. And then again, the not really an article, but we'll pretend it's an article, o for the vocative. In the nominative plural, we have high, which looks like hoi, but we've substituted an alpha for an omicron. Then we get ton, which is identical to the masculine neuter. Dative plural is tais. Again, we've substituted an alpha for an omicron. The masculine and neuter is tois. Then the accusative plural is tas, as opposed to masculine tous. And then lastly, the vocative is the interjection o. So those are our definite articles, and the definite articles reflect case and number, and which ones you choose depends on the gender of your noun. So memorize the nominative singular noun with the appropriate definite article, ho, to, or ha, and that will tell you the gender. So now let's look at the new endings we learn. The first declension endings, again, we're going to learn just the feminines for Chapter 4 Alpha. We'll see some slight variations for the masculines in Chapter 4 Beta. For the feminine forms, there's 4 slight variations to a common pattern. So we're going to use 4 different sample nouns to look at the 4 slight variations. Krene is going to be our first sample noun, and these are nouns of the first declension where the nominative singular ends in eta. Our next sample noun is hudria. These are nouns where the nominative singular ends in a long alpha, and for all of the ones where it ends in a long alpha, you'll notice that the long alpha is preceded by an epsilon, iota, or a rho. Our third variation is melita. These are ones that end in a short alpha. And then machaira. These are ones that end in a short alpha that is preceded by an epsilon, an iota, or a rho. So let's look at the new endings. For krene, the genitive singular is krenes, eta sigma. Dative singular crane, eta with an iota subscript. Accusative singular cranen. Vocative singular, as usual, is identical to the nominative singular. That's going to be true for most of our paradigms. The only exception we've seen thus far is the second declension agros versus vocative agre. So the nice thing about all of these variations is they only apply in the singular. So let's ignore the plural for a moment and look at the singular for the other three variations. So type 2, with our long alphas preceded by an epsilon iota or rho, we go from hudria to hudrias, and then in the dative is hudria, the accusative singular hudrion, and the vocative singular hudria. So far the difference between type 1 and type 2 is that type 1 has all etas, and type 2 has all long alphas. Now if we look at type 3, we're going to flip back and forth between the short alpha and the long eta. So melita, but then melites and melite. If you're wondering why the accent moved, go and review the video for chapter 3 beta on noun accents. For the accusative singular, we're back to the short alpha, meliton, and the vocative singular, melita. In the last one, we're going to have, it's the type where it ends in short alpha preceded by epsilon, iota, and rho. You'll notice in this one, instead of flipping back and forth between the short alpha and the eta, we flip back and forth between the short alpha and the long alpha. So machaira, but then machairas, machaira, machairon, and machaira. Now, not all editors will actually physically mark long versus short alphas for you, but usually introductory textbooks do. So you'll notice that the long alpha has the long bar over it, and the short alpha has a little bit of U over it. Now, as I promised, the endings for the nominative plural are going to be the same across all four types. So let's learn them for crani and then apply them across the board for the rest of them. So the nominative plural of crane is crani, with the ending is alpha iota. If you want to know why that particular accent has changed to a circumflex, you'll have to understand that for this particular form, the nominative plural feminine ending, alpha iota is treated like it's short. There's historical linguistic reasons for that, but I don't remember the specifics. So I know it seems to violate the rules of chapter 3 beta, but it's because alpha iota ending in the nominative plural is treated like it's short. So then let's look at the genitive plural, which is crenon. You'll see that the accent has hopped over to the last syllable. That is true throughout this paradigm, but I actually don't know why. The rest of them follow the normal accent rules. Cranice, you look at the video on 3 beta, you see that it's a long ultima with an acute on the penult. And then cranos, long ultima, acute on the penult, and crani, again, the vocative matches the nominative. So as promised, for hudria, melita, and machaira, the endings are exactly the same as what we just learned. So I'm going to apply it across the board. Hudriai, hudrion. You'll notice that for all of them in the genitive plural, it's a circumflex on the last syllable. Melita, meliton, melitais, melitas, melitai. Again, if you want to know about accent moving, look at chapter 3 beta. And then the last one, machairai, machairon, machairais, machairas, and machairai. So now that you've written all of them out, use your worksheet, practice them, and take a moment to sort of notice what the patterns are, where these words are similar, where they're different, etc., etc. So just to review, the first type is characterized by the ending of the long eta. Second type is epsilon iota or rho plus a long alpha. Third type is short alpha, and fourth type is epsilon iota or rho plus the short alpha. So there's where your endings are different, and then in the plural, they're all going to be the same. So don't think that there's any connection between type 1 and accents, or type 2 and accents, or type 3 and accents. Instead, every individual noun has an accent in the nominative singular. You have to memorize which accent it is and where it is, and then use the accent rules in chapter 3 beta to determine when that accent moves and whether it changes back and forth between acute and circumflex. So last slide, just for fun, in case you're interested. Ancient Greek has many different dialects, and we're learning the dialect spoken by the Athenians in the 5th to 3rd centuries BCE. And in the Attic dialect, the double T that you see in words like melita is actually in almost every single other dialect of ancient Greece is a double S, melissa. And then most of our English derivatives actually come to us with the double S. So there's a name Melissa, which means honey, coming from the ancient Greek melissa, which is the same as our word melita. Another word that you will learn in later chapters is thalata, which in non-Attic dialects is thalassa, and it means the sea, and it gives us fancy English words, which you might not be familiar with, like thalassocracy. So cracy means rule by, as in words like democracy, and we'll go with democracy. And then thalasso means sea. So a thalassocracy is what we call any nation or civilization that gains its power by its navy. So the Bronze Age Minoans have a thalassocracy, and also the 5th century Athenians. That's it for now. I will see you in chapter 4 beta.